So when it comes to three things, it's kind of an age-old dilemma, and I prefer for this to be as interactive as possible. So all of you, please open the Zoom webinar chat and be willing to text your response to me. What do you think kids, and kids, you can answer this about your parents. Parents, you can answer this about your kids. What do you think kids think about their parents in general? Just give me a one-word answer. If you could describe, like in a nutshell, what kids think about their parents, what would it be? Now, we've done this presentation quite a few times in a lot of different societies. And so the spectrum of the answer is always different, but I'm not going to say exactly what that is because I don't want to coach your answers. So one word answer, what do you think kids would say about their parents? Okay, well-meaning, they have all the answers, misunderstanding. Don't worry, we won't say your name. So parents are well-meaning. Parents, they have all the answers. Parents are misunderstanding. My mom said, my kids think I'm stupid, but when they're older, they will think they're smarty. Okay. Okay. So this is what kids think about their parents. All right, maybe we take two more answers on this one as you begin to think about what the parents say about their kids. Two more answers on what do kids think about their parents. I can see all of you in the chat. Half good. That's a good answer. Half good. Kids think parents are out of touch, naive. Okay, these are all great answers. Now then, let's flip it a little bit. What do you think parents think about their kids? What would you say parents would say about their kids? Parents don't get it, okay? Ew, ew. Parents on their kids, ew. My mom said naive. So parents think their children are naive, poor babies. Parents on their kids, my poor babies, okay? Lazy, mashallah. You know, depending on the word choice, you can see the culture kicking in, right? Okay, parents on their kids, they think they're lazy. We take, okay, parents think kids are focused on the wrong things. So parents, they think their children, they're thinking about a lot, it's just all the wrong things. They're focused on a lot of stuff, it's just all the wrong things, okay? Maybe we take one more answer. From a parent, okay? Oftentimes, kids don't have autonomy over themselves. So whenever a parent is thinking about their kids, they're thinking about how kids are not autonomous. They're not independent, can't take care of themselves. They may act independently, right? They may act autonomously, but they are very much dependent. And they don't have independent thought. They don't have independent thought. Like maybe their thoughts are dependent on their friends, dependent on whatever is trending on TikTok, depending on whatever is popular at the time. A lot of work. So parents on their kids, they think that they're a lot of work. I think our kids have a harder time academically than we did. So much information and resources out there, so much higher expectations. Parents on their kids, too much on social media. Okay. Now, we started to kind of transition a little bit. When you start talking about academic expectations, when you start talking about social media, now we're talking about society, right? Because it's the world that you live in. Social media is a big part of our society. Educational standards, college, diplomas, working at a certain age, social clocks. By this age, you should have graduated from college. By this way, you should have graduated from medical school, from dental school, from. These are all societal standards. So now independent as your own self, as a child or as a parent, or from the position of the other, whichever you prefer, tell me what you think about the society that you live in. A jungle. It's a jungle. It's a good answer. Corrupt. Hedonistic. Okay, that's an SAT $5 world right there. Imperfect. Cheese, mashallah. Society is very tough and demanding. Okay, So society is very tough. It's very demanding. Hedonistic, mashallah. Friday, I see you. Need a college degree for success. Okay, now that is a lot different, right? Uh, to think about a society where if you don't, a society where if you don't have that piece of paper, you're done. You can't do anything. Materialistic, fast-paced, expensive. Society is varied and ever-changing. Alienating. It's a good word. Society can be very much alienating. It is very varied, and it is ever changing. And it ain't cheap to live in this society, at least. So oftentimes, whenever you think about kids on their parents, parents on their kids, and both on society, what do you think is the missing link between these two things? Between kids and their parents, between parents and their kids, between families and society. What is the missing link? Communication, mashallah. Trust, mashallah. These are some good answers. I'm glad we're doing it online. Last time we did this in a message. Generational understanding of the world. There is the generational gap, right? But if you can link generational understandings of the world, then you would essentially have bridged the missing link, right? Mom said, kids don't know parents' problems and parents don't know kids' problems. You need openness. You need that openness. If parents are so consumed with the bills and the work and my kids and what are they watching on the internet, and then kids are so consumed with their friends and social media and what's trending and my grades and so, then if each one doesn't understand the problems of the other without that openness, then that's actually the word that we're looking for, right? Acceptance. In order for there to be openness, you have to have acceptance. Jazakallah khairah. Two different cultures. Parents stick to culture back home. Okay, so you have the my new home culture of second, third generation Muslims, and then you have back home culture of when I was growing up back in my day, so on and so forth. I think generational trauma affects us all because we think it is us. Generational trauma. It's a big word right there. I'm just trying to wrap my mind around generational trauma. SubhanAllah. Now, anyone else want to share their thoughts on that? Oh, maybe we'll get one more. Missing link between these two. Somebody might be typing a thesis. Okay, Khaled, we're not gonna force you. We're not gonna force you to share. But of course, the chat is there for you to share. Now, some of you are on your phones. You're like, I can't open my chat. I would say something, but I can't, and so on and so forth. Just for the sake of time, let me do this. Inshallah. We've activated the raise your hand feature. So if you can't type something, but you want to give a short, key emphasis, short answer, because if thought is coming up for our East Coast brothers and sisters, then you can raise your hand and you can share whenever we ask questions, because we want it to be interactive, inshallah. So really, we have to be able to have hard discussions, like difficult conversations. It's not difficult because it's controversial. It's difficult because it's hard to have that open environment where you can talk about these things. You have to be willing to address the generational gap, right? Who actually knows best? The people who were young and grew old and saw it all within their generation, and then is advising the upcoming group, or the ones who are literally living in it every single day? You know, everyone had to go to school, right? Most of your parents went to school, middle school, high school, college. Some of them did grad school, some of them medical school, et cetera, et cetera. They went through it, but they didn't go through exactly what you went through. Who actually knows best is probably one of the greatest conflicts when it comes to the communication. Look, I'm older than you. I went through that. I understand, right? It's assumptive language. It's where you're assuming a lot, right? Because high school today, as one of our sisters mentioned, the academic standards for today and even the academic environments today, drastically different. I hope I don't look old, but I'm not that old. I was just in college not very long ago. I was just in high school, less than a decade ago. I can tell you right now, it's completely different. I was a non-Muslim when I was in high school and college. It's completely different. Even with working in Muslim schools and Islamic schools and Hifz schools, it's completely different environment. But all of this is a testament to a phrase that I like to use often, which is the tide of the times, right? How do you connect with each other based on the current affairs? And that's not even factoring in how people are responding to current affairs. How someone in middle school, someone in high school, college, someone who is working age adult, in their early 20s or late teens, living at home with your parents, and how you're processing social distancing, how you're processing shelter in place, the coronavirus as a middle schooler, elementary schooler, high schooler, how you process that information is a lot different than someone who is working, someone who is, trying to manage bills and trying to deal with the situation. It's a lot different, right? So we have to find active strategies for how we actually fix these problems, okay? We have to find those active strategies. And for those of you who raised your hands, just be willing to wait, inshallah, so we can cover some points. Maybe we have some time also at the end for people to share their thoughts as well. But we prefer if you can type it, that's better, inshallah. So finding active strategies for how we actually fix problems. Because as the saying goes, diagnosis without prognosis is null and void. If you can say this is a problem, the kids spend too much time online, my parents, they don't understand. It's just to be able to diagnose an issue, it's not the same as finding a cure for it. It's not the same as finding a cure for it. If you go to a doctor's office and you talk about all of the things that are wrong, I'm sick, I have a sore throat. Yeah, it looks like it looks like you have a sore throat. Yeah, and I'm coughing. That's your lungs, they're contracting because you have phlegm in your throat, because that's what they just tell you the problem. No, you need a solution. You need to be able to say, here's the actual problem. You have strep throat, and here's what we're going to do to get rid of it. So we always want to come up with active strategies to fix these problems. And then the societal impact is something that's really important to discuss too. I know there's a little bit of lag. Sorry, I can see it in my video. May Allah remove the lag at me. So, for example, nature, like how you are fundamentally as a human being versus nurture. Growing up in a household where there's conflicting ideals from the culture that I'm from versus the culture that I'm in, right? To have like Desi culture at home, but then have be immersed in American culture at school, right? With your friends on social media. To, for example, work in an American environment, but keep your cultural identity. These are two different things that we have to always keep in mind, right? And nurture, right? Am I an organism in an environment being impacted by that environment, or am I an organism that's impacting the environment? These are all psychological questions that have been asked for decades about the concept of nature versus nurture. But we need to know, am I really the greatest answer to this can come from the one who created us, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is going to be the one who can give the answer to this question more than anyone else, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Are we organisms in an environment, or are we environment organisms? And then we want to make sure that whenever we talk about societal impact, that we make distinctions between home versus work versus school versus the masjid, the Islamic environment, quote unquote, and social life. Because how some people are when they're around Muslims is not the same as how they are when they're around their non-Muslim friends. Or how I am at school versus how I am on social media versus how I am when I'm at work versus how I am when I come home versus how I am when I go to the masjid. All of these things play a role in how you deal with problems at home and what you see with your family. Because if you come from a position of not being able to understand, you will never be able to have those hard conversations. So before we get into anything, let's just evaluate for a moment a general parental outlook. This is a bird's eye view. It's not to say all parents think about things the same way, but I just want to take a moment to just mention a few points from the perspective of a survey that we did with parents and different Muslim communities, and just share this with you. These are 3 of the primary subpoints of fears that parents sometimes have for their kids. My child wants to be religious, they want to study Islam, and it scares me. It scares me, the idea that my kid, they want to be religious. My daughter, she wants to wear hijab. No one in our family wears hijab. That scares me. My child, he wants to study Islam. He wants to become a sheikh, but he's going to be poor. I don't want my daughter to wear niqab in public because, you know, we live in a crazy world, Islamophobia. Like, I'm afraid for that. Or this other, like within the subpoint of my child, like how parents view their children whenever they become more religious. My child is neglecting their responsibilities for Islam. Yeah, mashallah, they go to all the halakats and they go to all the classes and they love Islam, but they won't do the dishes. They won't clean their room and they won't do their laundry. Or the probably one of the scariest things that parents have from this outlook is the more religious my child becomes, the more rebellious they become. You know, you try talking to your kid and you don't even know this hadith. You don't even understand it. You begin, whenever you see your child begin to weaponize Islam against you, it can be a very scary thing. And this is something that impacts how parents view their children, especially when it comes to religiosity. Another thing that we see from parental concerns are, my child has so many non-Muslim friends that I'm worried. Like, all of my kids' friends are non-Muslims. I'm worried about their Islamic identity. I'm worried about their practice of Islam. Or for example, my child is leaving prayer. I don't even know if my kid prays. I don't know if, you know, if when they go to school, they take off hijab. They tell me they're praying. They tell me that they're going to the masjid, but I don't know if they go to the masjid and they go somewhere else. I fear that my child is leaving off the obligations of Islam, the things that Allah had commanded them, for their vices, for video games. Instead of praying on time, they're playing video games, or for their friends. They may, you know, whenever we're in the house, I see that they're Muslim, but once they leave, once they're with their friends, once they're on social media, once they're texting, I don't know what they're talking. I don't know what that is. My kids love sports more than they love the deen. My child, they love to be on social media more than they love anything else, and that scares me for their spirituality. Or another concern is, I'm worried about the things my child does online or outside of the house, and I don't know what to do. Like, I want to trust my child. Sometimes it's how parents feel. I want to trust my child, but the minute while they're sitting there just like this on their phone, I have no idea what they're doing. I have no idea who they're talking to. One of the worst things that happens is whenever the parents find that their child is looking at stuff online, or like they you know, open up their social media and they see the type of things that they like and subscribe to and follow on YouTube and Instagram, and it can scare them. And more than that, because of the generational gap, not knowing what to do with that information, right? And then here's the other side of things of how parents feel sometimes. My child is so irresponsible. My child is so lazy. My child is failing at school. I don't know how to help them. Yeah, there's a greater academic standard, but my child is too lazy. They don't want to do anything. They don't want to do it. They're failing. They're irresponsible. They know they have to turn the work in, but they don't. And I don't know how to help them. I don't know how to do calculus. I don't know what the O in OChem stands for. You know, it's a lot. I look at my child's collegiate grades, my high school grades. They were supposed to be in AP classes, and now they're not eligible for this, that, and it can be scary for parents. Or the idea that my child just doesn't listen. Sometimes parents, this is one of the greatest concerns that they have. Doesn't matter what I tell them. Doesn't matter how nice I am, how firm I am. Doesn't matter what I say. They just won't listen to me, right? Or this is probably the worst case scenario out of all of these, is when a parent feels like my child hates my family, like they hate their siblings, they hate me as mom, they hate me as dad, they just don't want to be here, right? And it's a huge problem in the household. Whenever a parent begins to see their child as like everything is fine except with you, this can be one of the worst situations where the home becomes a war zone. It can be very, very difficult on the entire family, and it can be very, very scary. But we have to be clear, right? Just to address some of the concerns of parents, we have to be clear, because in order to answer these questions, you have to actually be able to address the youth. You have to be able to address your children, no matter how old they are. The first thing we have to understand is religiosity, it doesn't translate to rebellion. If your child cares about Islam, you know, we're talking about parent-child relationship, and obviously this isn't the best platform to like get into counseling and all this other stuff, but we can, like I said, bird's eye view. Just because your child wants to be religious doesn't mean that they're going to be rebellious. It's oftentimes like how we respond to our children finding their identity. This can sometimes be the biggest difference maker. Like if my child begins to want to study Islam more and care more about Islam, how am I responding to that? If I respond negatively, then this is something that they have a passion for. It's the same. If my child wants to be an athlete, if my child wants to go to school for this as opposed to that, if I respond to everything negatively, then of course you may see that rebellious tension. The Prophet ﷺ said, and this is for the children, just so that you're aware of it. Just because you become more religious, that should never ever translate to rebellion. Because the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever is pleased to have the rizq, the provision, keep in mind, rizq is knowledge of the deen. Your provision is knowledge, it's intelligence, it's the ability to learn and memorize Quran, to study Islam. Rizq is your college degree, it's your high school diploma, it's your GPA, it's your grades. All of these things come under the provision, the heading of rizq. If you want better grades, if you want to be knowledgeable about the deen, if you want to make good money in your life, your money, your career, you have this idea, I'm gonna have my own house, I'm gonna have my own car, I'm gonna have my own everything. You feel like this, you think this in your mind. The key to getting your rizq, your provision expanded, and to have a long life, because what does it matter that you become Sheikh al-Islam or you know, the most knowledgeable person of the deen on the face of the planet, but you die young? If you want to have the provision of good wealth, of good knowledge and all of these things, and you want to have your life extended, the Prophet ﷺ said, keep good relations with your family. So when your parents have these concerns, you need to know that whenever the more religious I become, the better I should be to my family. And the better I am to my family, it's a means for me to have more knowledge of Islam, not to have it reduced. Now, you use the same rational approach, this rationale of, okay, I want to do these things to be pleasing to Allah. I want to increase the knowledge of the deen and all these different things. I want to increase my religiosity. You use all of that and you focus it on your parents, because this is actually the key to spiritual benefit. I'm going to skip a couple of these points for the sake of time, but I want you all to know, especially for our youth who care about the religion, you feel like sometimes your parents are obstacles to that because of how they view your assimilation into your Muslim identity and learning about the deen. I want you to know you will never ever earn Allah's pleasure through his wrath, okay? If you are battling with your parents day in and day out because you want to be religious, then that means you may need to reevaluate what religiosity looks like. You may need to take some advice, some counsel on how you're assimilating this knowledge into your being, because you displeasing your parents and rebelling against your parents is never going to be pleasing to Allah. And the dua of your parents are important to your success, to all success in all facets of life. So you want to make sure that as you're studying the deen and assimilating these things into your being, maybe you want to wear abaya, maybe you want to wear hijab, maybe you want to just change some things with regards to your religiosity. You want to make sure that all of those things are translating to your parents being pleased with you, so they make dua for you, not against you, because of how you treat them. Now, this question about friendship with non-Muslims is something that is kind of an ongoing thing, because most of the Muslim community of the youth, they don't go to Islamic schools. And even then, going to an Islamic school doesn't guarantee that you have good Muslim friends, right? So for the youth, addressing them on this concern from the parents, be mindful of living a double life, okay? Of how you are with Muslims versus how you are with non-Muslims. Be mindful of having that two-faced lifestyle of, okay, well, when I'm at the dawah, I put on this face. Whenever I'm with my friends, we'll be kicking it and acting this way. When I'm at the masjid, I have my masjid talk. But outside of that, when I'm online, when I'm on social media, I talk a different type of way. You always want to make sure that you take in the path of ease when it comes to understanding that the more that you spend time with, the more it will assimilate into your being. But think about it like this, especially when it comes to your friends. At the end of the day, you will always spend more time at home than you will spend outside of it. So just be logical. Why would you want to make your friends a means of you living in war at home, where your parents are upset with you, you're getting grounded, your phone gets taken, you can't use the internet now and all this other stuff? Don't turn the home into a war zone. You have to sleep there. You have to eat there. Ami has to cook for you. Bob is paying the bills so that you can be in there. Don't turn the house into a war zone, all right? And then, you know, if you feel like you're the problem child in the family, my parents say it's always me and it's always my fault and so on and so forth. Remember this and keep this in front of you, all right? Allah is the one that gave you your parents. You didn't pick them, Allah did. So because of this, your parents have a huge right over you. They have a massive right over you. Now, you may feel like, okay, he's just talking to us youth now. He's not addressing the parents. Don't worry, we're going to talk to the parents too, okay? But just for now, understand and remember that Allah picked your parents so they have a massive right over you. Every time you get to the point where you have to break your fast, or outside of Ramadan, every time you open your refrigerator, who put the food there? Who did that? Who worked to have it there? Who went grocery shopping? Who organized it the way that it is? Who made sure that the food is in the refrigerator that you go to and eat? When you go to take a shower, why is the water hot? It's because somebody paid something for it to be there. Never ever underestimate the amount of things that your parents do for you. You may think, oh, they just told me I can't, this, that, and the third. Whenever you walk into your house, the only reason why you have that house there is because of the effort that your parents put forward. So remember how you actually have parents. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, out of all of the people on the face of the planet, picked these two people, which if you were to see the statistics of life, like the fact that your two parents came together, it's a miracle in and of itself. Allah picked them from a long lineage of human beings that had existed up to the point of them to be able to live long enough to come together, to be married, and to have you. That in and of itself is a miracle, and it's only by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy that it happened. So always think about the big picture when it comes to your parents' concerns and their outlook on you. Would you rather be happy and at peace in the house by doing some things that they say just for a short period of time? Eventually, you're going to move out, you're going to have your own, family, you're going to be doing your own thing. Eventually, inshallah, you're going to get there. Would you rather be happy and at peace at home by listening to them for the 18, 20, 22 years, 24 years that you have to put in of being with them, and then have the rest of your life to yourself until you have your own kids and you go through the same issues? Or would you want to be miserable and in turmoil and have your parents upset and sad and calling? It's not worth it. So always think about the big picture when it comes to your relationship between you and your parents. But of course, we got to be fair, because you have to evaluate the youth's outlook when it comes to how they view their parents. And this has tiers too. It has levels to it. For some youth, they feel like my parents are my greatest enemy. Every time I try to do good, they're the ones that stop me. I want to read more Quran. They say, no, you need to be balanced. Don't be extreme. Every time I want to, sorry, I see it's lagging. Are we back? Let me do something. Every time I want to go to the masjid, they say no. If I wanted to go do the haram, they'd be like, yeah, sure, go do the haram. I want to do something for Islam, they say no. Some kids, they feel like my parents are just oppressive. They literally don't have anything better to do than to harass me. I'm sitting in my room and I'm chilling. They come in, what are you doing? I'm sitting in my room. Well, get up, go do this, you go do that. They feel like the parents, the only thing that they want to do is just make my life hard. Or sometimes kids, they feel like my parents, they don't have any understanding of Islam, and that actually hurts my Islam. They don't know about fiqh, they don't know about aqidah, they don't know about tawheed, they don't know about this, they don't know about that. And because they don't know about all this stuff, it makes it hard on me to actually do the stuff that I know is there. So that's one framework of thinking from the youth to the parents. The other side of it is my parents, they just don't get me, period. They're way too cultural to understand like what I'm actually going through, what I think, what I feel, my goals, my dreams. And they just don't listen to me. Even if I wanted to sit down and talk to them, Brother Issa, they're not going to listen to me. They feel like my parents, they just don't listen. Or they feel like my parents, they think they know everything, but they have no idea what's going on in my world, for me, right? Or my parents, they hold me to a standard that they themselves don't live by. They tell me to do all this stuff. They tell me to be good and all this stuff, but I see that fight, I see they argue, I see they act like this and that and the third. Or the last tier is I want to just live my life and I don't understand why my parents have to be so involved. Like, I'm just trying to do my thing. Why do they have to come in and tell me all the stuff that I can and can't do? Some kids, they feel like that. Or I just can't wait to get out of my house so I can do whatever I want. Like, this sucks. I can't listen. I can't do this. I can't do that. I just can't wait to be free of them. Now, I want to ask you all a question and give me your answer in the chat. What's the difference between the parents' language and the youth's language in this little exercise? So you see these examples that we have here from what the youth would say, like from their outlook. What's the difference between their language and the language of the parents? One is selfless and the other is selfish. Parents are more worried while youth are more angry. That's actually a good one. The gratitude, parents are saying out of concern. Children are more selfish of the youth. Both parties care about the kids. So both parties, they care, okay? Anyone else? What do you see about the difference in the language? Youth are in the now and parents are thinking about the future, okay? Right, so like you see, I don't want my kid to become religious and poor. He wants to be a sheikh, how's he gonna feed himself? Or there's so many non-Muslim friends, what about their akhirah? Or they're lazy, how are they gonna get a degree, right? So there's that side of it. And then it's the other side. Me, my, me, my, me, my. And this is kind of the difference between being a child and being an adult, right? Is, look, you're gonna think more about yourself when you're a youth. When you were a child, when you were someone's kid, you thought a lot about yourself. And it's okay for kids to be like that. I mean, kids are kids. Elementary, middle school, high school, college, young working adult, it's always the same. Until you have a family that's your own, you kind of think about the world through the lens of you. It's just the way that it is. Until you get married, you have kids, you have to learn selflessness with time, especially within the framework of a family. But when it comes to parents, my advice to them, because many of you are listening to this and you're like, that's my kid. That little sentence right there, that's my kid. Or some of you are seeing this like, that's my mama, that's my baba. That's exactly how my parents are. From parents to kids, understanding their concerns, I want you guys to always think about playing the long game, okay? Play the long game. Because kids are thinking in the now and you're thinking in their future, but if you attack them in the now, then you may find it difficult to be a part of their future. They may cut you off whenever they get older. Now how you were raised, you may never think in a million years of cutting off your parents, of not talking to my mom. You may never, in a million years, I never would have thought like that. That's maybe how you're thinking. I never, no matter how angry my parents made me, I never would have talked to them. You're not dealing with that group anymore. That's not the millennials. 1990s forward, they're not like that. They will do it. So you gotta be willing to play the long game according to how they are, not according to how you were. So facilitate knowledge to your children. When they're young, give them the gift of the Quran. Let them, if they want to go to the halakha, let them do it. It will serve them and it will serve you. If they care about the deen, when you pass away, they're going to be making dua for you, reading Quran, all this stuff. They're going to be doing this stuff and you're going to get the reward for it. Allah will never ever allow those to preserve his deen to be deprived in this life or the next. So don't worry about your child wanting to be a sheikh or a sheikha or Quran. Allah will never ever make such people poor. I know we have this dichotomy of the local imam and he doesn't have any money, and the Quran teacher, they struggle, and their family is religious, but they struggle. Trust Allah. Trust Allah. Allah can make them a doctor and a sheikh. Just trust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with it. Look, for us as adults, alhamdulillah, I don't have kids. I did say alhamdulillah, I don't have kids. Inshallah, when the time comes, we have kids, inshallah. But I don't have any children, alhamdulillah. But there's some things that your kids can do that you just can't. When it comes to the worship, the stamina to do it. So when you have a kid that wants to go to the halakha, that wants to be involved in the masjid, that wants to work within the framework of I want to memorize Quran, you may have never been able to do it, but they can do it. So vicariously through your children, let them get the hasanat. The fact that you let them do it will get you the reward too. Why not? Unless they're doing something crazy or thinking about some extreme stuff, that stuff stands out like a sore thumb. But if they just want to be connected to Allah, they just want to learn about the deen, facilitate it to them. You win, they win. At least like to have to worry about your child being religious is way better than having to worry about your kid sneaking off with a boyfriend or a girlfriend or watching this stuff and vaping this and doing that, breaking their fast when nobody is looking. That's a good problem to have, but it is still a problem. But just make sure that you don't make them hate you because they love Islam, or make them hate Islam because of their love for you. Never ever set up enemies like that within the home. Now, what about this issue with the friends and their lifestyle and all of this? The easiest solution to children with bad friends is to help them get good ones. Like you wonder, well, my kid, they hang out with these people and all. Well, what are you doing to put them in a position to have better friends? Now, some people, they pack their kids up and they move halfway across the country because I don't want you around that boy. Those girls are bad for you. So different school. We change zip codes. You know, some people do, but put them in a position where they can get good friends. So many youth programs, so many, MSA, this and so. Put them in a position where they can be involved in things like that. You may feel like it's too late for my kid. Never ever despair for Allah's mercy. Never ever feel like it's too late for anyone. Imagine if we thought it was too late for you to come back to Allah, to be the Muslim that you know you should be. We should never have this fatalist mentality when it comes to people's potential to be good. Put them in a position to make good friends. Help them be active and engaged within the Muslim community. And sometimes families who have kids that have bad friends, it's because they kind of isolate themselves from Muslims. Maybe you think, well, the Muslims, they judge us, and the Muslims, they act like this. Get over that. Your child's future is more important. And, you know, there's a quote by Ali ibn Abi Talib where he said, the first 7 years of your child's life, let them play. So from ages 0 to 7, they're children. Let them play. You know, you can't be too strict on them. Their mind is still developing. In developmental psychology, there's entire like essays and research papers done on this. Kids, let them play. But he said, for the next 7 years, meaning from you know, age like 7, 8 up until they turn 14, this is the time to discipline them. This is the time to teach them self-discipline, to clean up after themselves, so on and so forth. But he said for the next 7 years, 14, 15 to 21, befriend them, be their friend. If you in ages 8 through 14 are trying to be their friend, and then when they turn 14, you try to discipline them, you're gonna run into issues. Is it impossible? Not necessarily, but you're gonna run into it. You have to treat people according to their tiers. You may feel like, well, if I didn't treat them like this when I was a kid, then I wouldn't have gone through this, that, and the third. Don't think like that. Don't think like this in hindsight, right? Don't think like this in hindsight, because regret is not a solution, right? Do what you can with what you can. Understand that you catch more flies. I'm from Kentucky, so we have a bunch of euphemisms like this. You catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. If you're sweet to your child and you sit down and you talk to them and you explain things in a good way, it's okay to be lenient. It's okay. You don't have to be like, you had fun yesterday, so you can't have fun today. You don't have to have that mentality. It's okay to give some leeway. If they do, if they want to do something that isn't bad, you know, just what's wrong with giving it to them? Be easy on your kids. You have to let kids be kids. Yes, you live life and you have to teach them things. You have to tell them things. That's very important. We need your experience as parents. We do. But some things you also have to be able to learn on your own. So it's better for them to play in good company that you know about than to feel like I have to sneak around. I have to, if I want to hang out with my friends, I have to join this Discord and have the secret chats and so on and so forth. It's better to put them in a position where they feel accepted and it's easy for them to be open with you than where they have to feel like I have to sneak and hide everything. Now, it may be hard, again, but it's never too late. It's never, ever too late. When dealing with difficult children, because some children are difficult, I was a difficult child. May Allah got my parents through Islam. I mean, man, I put my parents through some stuff. I was not an easy child to deal with. But now, mashallah, my dad, he used to tell me as a kid, because I used to get in a lot of trouble. So he would ground me and all this stuff because of all the crazy stuff I would do as a kid. And he used to always tell me, when you're older, when you're an adult, we'll be best friends. When you're an adult, we'll be best friends. We'll be best friends. I promise. We'll be best friends. He used to always tell me that. And now, sorry, I see it's lagging. Ya Allah, remove the lag. Oh, Allah, remove the lag. I mean, now he's my best friend. If I wanted to talk to if I talk to my dad or hang out with my dad, I literally feel like I'm hanging out with myself because he laid the groundwork for that. My mother, she always open communication. Sometimes for the good, sometimes for the bad, but it's always for the better. When you can have that relationship, you got to play the long game when it comes to your kids. You treat them like this today. When they get freedom, they may never come back to you. It's sad that this is the society that we're brought up in, but it's just the way that it is. So when dealing with difficult children who are struggling, be willing to listen to them and to be there for them. Sometimes they don't need an answer. They just need an ear that will listen. Sometimes that's just the best that we can do. You know, sometimes the best that you can do is just be there for them and to wade through that storm. Luqman is giving advice to his child. The verse in Surah Luqman, chapter 31, verses, 11 through 19. His advice is to his son. These are advices that we all need. This should be a separate class in and of itself. The wisdom that we take from that is not just for parents to their kids, but also for kids to their parents. It works both ways. Nuh alayhi salam with his son, whenever he's saying, I'm gonna climb this mountain, it's about to flood. The world is flooding. If you want to climb a mountain, you see Nuh, even in that situation, he's not berating him, you stupid boy, he's not attacking him. He's still calling him with mercy, and his son still didn't listen, but he did the best that he could. And Ibrahim, think about the example of Ibrahim, because we hear these stories, but do we reflect on them? Ibrahim as a son had a difficult father, and Ibrahim as a father had very righteous children. So him as a son, he had a father that tried to kill him. He said, if you keep talking to me about this Islam stuff, I'm gonna stone you. Like straight like that, I'm gonna kill you. Had his kid launched into a fire pit. So it doesn't, you think your parents are hard? At least your dad doesn't treat you like Ibrahim's dad treated him. And then, you know, because of his steadfastness as a child, look at how it made itself evident within his own children, with Ismail and Ishaq. A lot of examples to be taken from that, but in both cases, it's both, in all three cases of Luqman, of Nuh, of Ibrahim, and other examples of parents in the Quran, of Miriam, of Musa. You can go on and on and on with these examples, Zakaria and Yahya. You always play the long game. You always play the long game. Be loving, be caring, be open, be willing to listen. Now the society is a different beast, right? We get a broad spectrum of these things when it comes to like the answers to the society. For example, it's too hard to practice Islam in the West. Muslims in America, American Muslims, Muslim Americans. It's hard for us in the West. It's hard. Or you get some people who feel like, look, the masjid, I don't feel welcome there. I don't feel welcome in the masjid. Like, yeah, there's this Muslim community, there's this center, there's this masjid, there's this. I don't feel welcome there. Every time I go, I feel like people judge me. Or there's too much drama and too much politics in the Muslim community. I don't want to be around Muslims. There's too much drama. There's too many cliques. There's too much division. These people are arguing over these fiqh matters. They're arguing over the moon sighting versus the calculations. They're arguing over Hanafi versus Zanafi. They're arguing over, sorry, it's lagging again. I don't know why it's lagging. I just upgraded my internet. Ya Allah, remove the lag. I mean, there's a lot of questions that we have, not just of being American Muslims in America, but also being Muslims within our own Muslim communities. But these things, they all have practical solutions. Muslims, we ourselves within our own society, we should not be our greatest enemies. We should not be our greatest enemies. We have to help each other because honestly, we're all we have. Whether you're a black revert or Desi or Arab or African or this or that or third, at the end of the day, all we have is each other. So why not take care of your parents? Why not take care of your children? Why not take care of your community within our own place within the society? And we should never ever find an excuse as Muslims to abandon the greatest place on earth. The Prophet ﷺ said, Hadith Qudsi narrated by Ibn Umar, that the greatest place on the face of the planet is the masjid. Should never ever find an excuse, no matter how much drama, how many cliques, politics, nationalism, whatever you run into, you should never find an excuse not to go to the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because once you hear Allahu Akbar, once the prayer starts, the politics stop. The division, who cares? We're all praying. So it's also important to note that wherever there's khair, shaitan is there within our society. You're always going to see it. It's an inevitability. It's just the way that it is. It's not easy, but it's just the way that it is sometimes. But even though that's the case, us trying to do the best that we can in school. You want to go to school, you want to get good grades? Shaitan, he's going to come. You want to go to college, you want to get a good career? Shaitan, he's going to come. You're always going to run into these same issues again and again and again like this. Man, that lag. Wow. But at the end of the day, you have to be the change that you wish to see in others. Yeah, if Islam is hard to practice in the West, then you have to be at the forefront of making it easy. If college campuses are full of fitna, then you have to be at the forefront of removing the fitna by being a positive example yourself. In high school, if there's so much drama and so many issues, then you have to make sure that you're the opposite of those problems. And at the end of the day, all of us, we have to be grateful. It can be so much worse. Yeah, it's hard sometimes. Yeah, we have to deal with Islamophobia. Yeah, we have to deal with the propaganda and all this stuff. Yeah, it's hard. but at least we're not being like murdered in our homes. I know that there's a big case that's trending in the news of the African American who's jogging through the neighborhood. I don't know the full details of the case. I don't want to speak beyond my level, but he was shot and killed, and it caused like a lot of outrage. And I think the people were just arrested for that situation that had happened. But you know, this is the dichotomy that exists within this country. It is a very real thing in this country of racial tensions. Can you imagine if they treated us Muslims like that? Not because of the color of our skin, but because of our religious preference. Alhamdulillah, we see neighborhoods of Muslims where they can walk around in their topis and their abayas and everything. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, it could be so much worse for us in the society. At least, you know, our ability to practice the deen is not compromised. Some Muslim countries, if you go to a masjid more than one time, you may get disappeared. Allah keep us safe. Ameen. So moving forward, the key things to putting these big three parts together, and this is only part 1 of 3, but we try to make it easy on all of you, inshallah. The solutions are actually surprisingly simple, because all of these things exist within the Quran and the Sunnah, especially when it comes to this nature versus nurture. Don't you know the Prophet ﷺ, it's easy for us to say it's so hard on our youth. Prophet ﷺ was a youth. He lived in a society where people would strip naked and make tawaf around the Kaaba, where people as a pastime would get drunk and play music, where people in the society, they had a different type of exposure to sinfulness, and they were not shy to act upon those feelings in that society. He lived in a place of shirk, and he was able to make it a place of Islam. If this is the example of the Prophet ﷺ, do you think that America is harder than Mecca, than the Qurayshi shirk-led Mecca? Do you think that it's really that much harder? You may think yes, but trust me, if it was harder in America, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ would have been sent to 2020 to help us out. Rather, he was sent to the worst time with the worst people to set the best example. So if he can do it then we can do it too. And we also have the example of Yusuf alayhi salam. He was the only Muslim in Egypt until his family came and moved there. Now, you see, Islam is in Egypt. It's the hub of Quran. When it comes to the Qur'an, Abdul Basit and Shawi and all these guys came out of Egypt. So Yusuf alayhi salam, he was young, he was handsome. You think that the temptations in your high school are difficult? Imagine the temptations in an entire country. So we can do it. We just need to prioritize a few simple things to benefit each other. Parents, you have to listen to your kids. Kids, you have to listen to your parents. But the most important thing is to try to understand each other. We have to always try to understand each other. We have to support one another. We have to support each other, both when things are easy and when things are hard. Yeah, when your kid gets accepted into that school that you want for them and all that stuff, you have to accept them. If they say, look, I don't want to go to school for this, I want to go, you need to sit down, you need to talk to them, you need to advise them, you need to be willing to understand. We have to be understanding, because at the end of the day, kids, you cannot change your parents. They have been who they are longer than you have been alive. They have been themselves longer than you have been alive. You can't change them, and you shouldn't try to. Parents, you are not in the hallways. You're not on the campus with them. You don't see the things that they see. Take it from someone who goes where they are. It's rough. It is rough. It's hard. You need to be laying. You need to be gentle. Be pliant. Bend, don't break. It doesn't mean you have to sacrifice your principles and what you think is right, but at the same time, bend, be lenient. It will make it much easier on them, especially with the things that they have to go through and the pressures that they have. Support each other both when it's easy and when it's hard. And we have to remain united no matter what. United as family, parents with kids, kids with parents, and united within the society. Because as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in Surah Al-Anfal, chapter 8, verse 46, regardless of our differences, through the generational gap or the environments that we grow up in, our preferences and so on and so forth, if we find reasons to argue and separate, then we will lose our strength. So we have to stay together, and we have to be patient upon that. Now, so that is the rough footnotes. I didn't want to go over an hour. I told Sister Tara, may Allah bless Sister Tara, ICM, YC, may Allah bless all of the coordinators who made this happen and the organizers for it. Allahumma ameen. I didn't want to go overtime. I told Sister I could do this in 40 minutes. So we coming up on 45, or actually 55. So are there any questions, comments, concerns, additions, omissions, suggestions, or objections to anything that we shared today? I saw some people had posted some questions. Sister Huma, okay, maybe she's not there. Okay. I know she raised her hand and wanted to say something. Let me change this feature real quick. If you want to ask something or share something, the raise your hand feature is up, but keep in mind the time. All right. So if you want to say something, don't go too hard. I'll try not to give long answers. What if your child is, what if kids are resisting all your teachings and help to encourage them to follow the deen? If your children are resisting all of your teachings, it can be really, really hard. Like, it can be one of the most difficult things ever. Sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests us through our parents, sometimes Allah tests us through our kids. But if you've been trying everything and nothing is working, then you have to be willing to try something else. If being a disciplinarian isn't working, then try being lenient. I remember there was a case with like a counseling case, because we work with some behavioral counselors within like Islamic schoolings and things like this. They're certified psychologists. We just come for the tarbiyah, you know, and just to get some khair, you know. Right. So there was a kid who was having these issues. And so the parent was saying, I keep grounding them and I take their phone and they don't listen. And every time they do something, I get in trouble and I ground them and I give them a spanking and they're doing corporal punishment, isolation. They're doing everything. They're doing all this different stuff. So the counselor, they said, look, try doing something else. You spanking your kid. This isn't a discussion on corporal punishment. It's not a discussion on corporal punishment. They do something and you give them a spanking. You ground them. You take their phone. You take their TV. They even took the door off the kid's room so that they couldn't be like isolated and stuff. You've done all this stuff. Counselor said, go home, give them their door back, give them their TV, and stop, because this is negative reinforcement. You're reinforcing all the things, the behaviors that you don't want to see because of how you're reacting to them. So mashallah, after follow up, once the parent kind of changed the approach, as opposed to this, you know, hardcore disciplinarian, then the child actually improved behavior wise. So be willing to take a different approach. Now, so okay. All right, and let's see, a lot of questions. Okay. How do we deal with relationships with family members who are just toxic and make the environment worse? Am I still at fault or not for not wanting to interact with them? If one of those things that have been haunting, it's one of those things that have been haunting me for a bit, and I don't know why I need to be around them, but I don't know why I need to be around them. Some environments are extremely toxic. Like we said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sometimes tests us in our kids, sometimes tests us in our parents, sometimes tests us with our family, right? You're going to be tested in something. The verses from Surah Al-Ankabut, you're going to get tested with something. But the key is to see what role you play in the test and what are you supposed to learn from it. You don't get tested just to be like, ha, ha, look at this bad stuff happening to you. Doesn't that suck? Oh, this is awful. That's not what that's for. You're tested so that you can pass the test, so that you can rise above and transcend the issues that you're facing, right? So bearing that in mind, if the environment is toxic, what are you doing to remove the toxicity? If you can say, I've tried everything, just like, you know, maybe a parent says, I try all the stuff my kids keep resisting. You can say, I've tried everything to help the toxic environment. Be willing to try something else. Look at the example of Ibrahim and the verses of Surah Maryam. He tried everything trying to talk to his dad. When did he give up? It wasn't until after they launched him in the fire pit. Now, your parents aren't launching you in the fire pit, so don't give up. And the minute you begin to think to yourself, look, my parents are never going to change. This environment, my family, they're never going to change. My kids are never going to change. The minute you give up, it's like you're saying, Allah, I know what you decreed. I know what you decreed for them. So I'm not going to do anything else, because I know what I know about the situation is absolute. Who thinks like this? Who speaks on behalf of Allah to say that my mom she's just going to be like this forever? My dad is going to be like this forever. when we know we have examples of Islam in Islam where Umar ibn al-Khattab, he went from being on his way to murder the Prophet ﷺ to being the second Khalifa and someone who the Prophet ﷺ said, if there was going to be a prophet after me, it would be Umar. This is someone who was coming to be his murderer, alayhi salatu wasalam, and he became the greatest symbol of the criteria of good and evil in our deen, radiallahu anhu. So if that's the case for someone like Umar, your parents are not Umar. They're not, the situation is not as extreme for your kids. Be willing to turn to Allah in supplication, be willing to be patient, be willing to be lenient, be willing to make excuses, and be willing to work together. Be willing to accept one another despite the differences. Because at the end of the day, we are ourselves. And we need people to accept us for who we are, not reject us for because of who we want them to be. We are ourselves. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts us for who we are, so we have to also be willing to do that with each other. Any other questions, comments, concerns, additions, omissions, suggestions, objections, anything that we share? Huh? Well, if there's nothing else to add, I thank you once again for taking time out of your Friday evening to join us. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant you sakina, mawadda, and rahmah, to grant you tranquility, to grant you unconditional love and mercy in your household, in your family, between your loved ones. We ask Allah to give you ease when it comes to the interaction between the parents and the children, between the children and the parents. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to soften our hearts so that the children will lower their wings of mercy to their parents, and so that the parents will open their ears to the concerns and the issues that their children are going through. We ask Allah Jalla Jalal to make this Ramadan remarkable, reformational, something that we come out better than we were going into it. We ask Allah to keep each and every single one of you safe from harm in all of its forms, to keep you and your loved ones safe from the coronavirus, from more than the coronavirus, from what's worse than it, from what's less than it, in all of its forms. For the children that are in school, elementary, middle school, high school, college, going into grad school, medical school, we ask Allah to give you all the success on your exams. We ask Allah to make it easy on you between fasting and having to study and staying up late and waking up early. We ask Allah to make it easy on you. To the parents who are working, trying to provide for their loved ones, we ask Allah to preserve your means of income and to not test you financially. We ask Allah, sorry, the lag kicked in. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to preserve you mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually in all of your affairs. We ask Allah to remove any usur, any difficulties from your life, and to replace it with yusra, infinite and unending ease and relief. And we ask Allah to only test us in relief so that we can be from amongst the shakirin, from amongst those who are grateful and thankful to Him. Allahumma kfir lil muslimin wa muslimat wa mu'minin wa mu'minat. Subhanaka Allahumma bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. بريتم وجزيتم وبقيتم وكفيتم وعن الشيطان نحيتم. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.